Mans are back
Stop,
live.
stop with that, please.
Yes, sir. Malcolm, me and you are running down the home stretch for Fantasy Fridays. We're down to our second last division on the board. Guess what? It's the
Fantasy
North and it's
Friday.
in the NFC, baby. Not the best division in football, like me and you know it is. So we got the NFC North on tap for today.
Yeah, so we're going to start it off with the quarterbacks as we normally do. The first team we're going to name off, just because this guy's ranked the highest, is the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers have an elite franchise quarterback named Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Last year threw for 4,002 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, only 4 picks at a 62 completion rate, and also had one rushing touchdown for 183 rush yards throughout the whole season. Hey, every yard counts, especially for fantasy. So him getting a few points there. Uh, I think for this year, he's going to be very good with on. Oh well, we'll get into his weapons and who he's going to throw to, but with who he's playing with, I think he has a few options that can help him be as successful as he has been in the past. So I have him at number 10 overall for quarterbacks.
Whew. Mr. Rogers has finished ninth in fantasy points, even though he appeared in all 16 games and ranked eighth in passing attempts. Hasn't finished better than 16th in yards per attempt since 2014 due to Mr. 36-year-old arm
Yeah.
stuff, and hasn't cleared 26 passing touchdowns in a season since 2016. But I think kind of put some more flame to the fire with them drafting a quarterback in the first round. So I think it's going to be a huge revenge tour for Aaron Rodgers this year. And he does have a decent receiving core and a decent offensive line, so it should help him flourish. So I have him ranked one behind you at 11 in my quarterback rankings, mid to back end quarterback number one. I
Yeah.
think he's probably going to get overdrafted just because his name is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Another Aaron on the Green Bay team is Aaron Jones, who
Yes,
last
sir.
season had 236 carries for 1,084 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns, as well as 49 receptions for 474 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. He was seventh in running backs with their most all-purpose yards with 1,445, if I do my math correctly. Brock math, watch out. And had an NFL league high 19 touchdowns. 5 weekly finishes outside the top 30, however, but still managed the second most points at the running back position. So I'm looking for consistency this year for Aaron Jones. I drafted him last year.
Good
He
pick.
I think, had like two weeks of over 40 plus points, but 2 weeks he dogged it. So it's not too hot, but I killed the game with 40 points in 2 straight weeks. So you really don't expect that anyway. So I have Aaron Jones ranked ninth in running back rankings as a high to mid end running back number one.
Yeah, I have him at number 7 overall, so 2 spots ahead of
Woo.
you. Yeah, I really like him. I think he's going to have that year where he's going to be more consistent this year. And he's good catching running back too, so Aaron Rodgers can maybe rely on him on some check
Oh,
downs and everything.
speaking of catching running backs, Mr. Green Bay has got another one in Jamal Williams, who didn't do
Hmm.
much on the ground. 107 carries or 107 yards carrying the ball. No, 107 carries for 460 yards and one touchdown and 39 receptions for 253 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he's throwing it. If Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, it's mostly going towards Jamal Williams in the touchdown game, passing the ball. And that kind of hurt me a lot last year, having to see Aaron Jones not catch touchdowns with Jamal Williams getting most of them.
Yeah.
But he was 24th in fantasy last year in his 13 active weeks. So he's putting up numbers even though he's not running back number one. So I have him 45th in running back rankings just as a bench roll waiver wire player if Aaron
Yeah.
Jones gets hurt.
Just someone to look out for if he does. So yeah, he's a good running back. We're gonna move along to the wide receivers now, and this wide receiver is probably one of the most underrated, underappreciated wide receivers for for a while, for like the past few years, for sure. Last year he had played 12 games, had 3 yards under 1,000 yards reception yards, so that's 997, 5 reception touchdowns, 83 receptions, and 127 targets. That's Mr. Devontae Adams.
Leaving us on a cliffhanger, eh?
Yeah, if you guys didn't know who that was. But last year, putting up good numbers, targeting 127 times only in 12 games. So I think he was on pace to maybe hit 100 catches or just below that. So he's someone to look out for. I have him at number 2 in my wide receiver rankings.
Absolutely. Me too. I have him ranked number 2 as well. Devontae Adams has 4 consecutive seasons as a top 10 receiver in fantasy points per game. And he was fantasy's number 2 scoring receiver during his 12 active weeks, but has missed at least one regular season game due to injury in each of the past 3 seasons, including 4 last year. So hopefully he can stay healthy as much, but he puts up the points when he's in the lineup. So yeah, number 2 in wide receivers, top end wide receiver number 1.
And then the other guy on Green Bay, I don't have him ranked, but I would say he's a good pickup on the waiver wire and whatnot, is Mr. Alan Lazard. So he's entering his 3rd year this year. Last year, he played in all 16 games, had 35 receptions on 52 targets. Most of those targets obviously going to Devontae Adams. He picked up
Deservingly so.
Yeah. Pull up 477 yards and 3 touchdowns to his name for receiving. So I think he's bound to have more looks this year because they'd want Devontae Adams is probably going to get double coverage most of the time because he's the biggest
Devontae
threat.
Adams.
Pardon?
Because he's Devontae Adams.
Because he's Devontae Adams. So maybe Lazard's going to pick it up and get a few more looks this year from Aaron Rodgers and he can hit him, add a few more touchdowns, and then he's probably just around like a 900-yard receiving receiver. So he's someone to look out for on the waiver wire for me.
You heard it here first. Tight end position for Green Bay is kind of in question. We got Jace Sternberger is going to be his first year as a starting tight end in the NFL. That's due to Jimmy Graham leaving Green Bay and staying in Division to a team we'll get to later. Played big in the playoffs for Green Bay, so I think that should increase his targets, but it's not a person that I have on my radar on my fantasy lineup. So I have him ranked 25th in my tight end rankings just as a bench role. Hopefully he can turn some heads and maybe turn our heads like me and Malcolm and see if they could crack some lineups later on into the season.
Yeah, I don't have him on mine either, obviously, in my top 26, but he would probably be around the 30 mark anyways. He's, like Jay said, like a wire tight end to look out for. And then 4 kickers, so I'll say 2 out of 40 last year for 40. He hit 40 out of 41 extra points, 2 out of 24 field goals. So that's a 91.7% field goal percentage for Mason Crosby. Hit half of his 50 yards, 1 out of 2.
Yeah, come on.
7 out of 8, 40 to 49 yards. 11 out of 11 for 30 to 39 yards. 2 out of 2 for 20 to 29, and 1 out of 1 from 0 to 19. And it's rare you see those kickers hitting those within 20 yards. So I have Mason Crosby in my top 15, ranked at number 14 for kickers. He's still a good kicker to look out for, but I feel like there's younger names and bigger legs out there that you can look out for as well.
Yeah, you hit it on T for me. I think he's just too old and aging leg. Like you said, he's only had 2 kicks from outside 50-plus last year. So I think you can probably expect the same this year, if not worse. So he's not inside my top 15 because that's where you see your big points is coming from outside 50 yards and longer. The Green Bay defense I think is kind of quietly could have a good season. Last season, 41 sacks, 17 INTs, 7 fumbles, no touchdowns, but 313 yards against and 5,642 yards against. Good players in this team. You have Jair Alexander, you have the Smith brothers. So good players, but they just lacked fantasy point production. Like 0 touchdowns definitely doesn't help your cause, but big 17 INTs. So they're kind of like have top 15 defenses, and they're probably just in the fringe of that. Not inside my top 15.
Not inside your top 15? I have them at number 13 overall. I think they're going to be bound for a big year this year and they want to prove people wrong and get some of those touchdowns that they didn't get last year. So that's why I have them number 13. But then again, you only need 1 defense. And if you're basically in the 12-man league max, I'm assuming, like that's the biggest one I've been in so far. We have the 12, 10, and 8.
Malcolm likes them big.
There's 12 other teams ahead of the Packers that you can look out for. So you're bound to get one of them unless someone picks 2 defenses, which would be atrocious for you to do. The next team, we're going to get to Jake Eagles' favorite team, the Detroit Lions. Shout out Jake Eagles, been on the podcast before, but we're going to start with one of the most underrated quarterbacks that's been around for quite some time as well, is Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford last year only played 8 games, but he put up 1 yard below 2,500 yards, so 2,499 passing yards, 19 touchdowns in 8 games, 5 picks, and a 64.3% completion rate. So in only playing half the season, he put up pretty decent numbers. And I remember like David Blow, is that how you pronounce it? David Blow, like
Yeah, wow.
yeah, coming in and replacing him for a few games as well. Obviously, they're the Lions, so they didn't do much anyways.
Hey.
But for me, Matthew Stafford's a really good quarterback, and I feel if he's healthy, then he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback for you as well because he's a consistent guy. And so that's why I have him at number 12 overall for quarterbacks.
Yeah. 5 of his 8 starts last season, Matt Stafford was a top 10 fantasy quarterback, which was the 4th best rate for the quarterback position. And Stafford did have a career high 8.6 yards per attempt, which was good for second best in the league. So Matt Stafford's still showing up, even though he's playing behind a terrible team defensively. But honestly, he's got good weapons. Like, you can't deny he's got 2 solid receivers, a good tight end, and a pretty good running back we'll get really soon. So hopefully he can stay healthy, but he hasn't missed much games up until last season. So hopefully they can do something because Matt Stafford is just washing his career away in Detroit right now. So I have him ranked 12th, and again, like you have it, 12th in fantasy quarterback rankings, mid to low end quarterback number 1. For me, I took him in my draft last year before he got hurt. But he was a good plus before he got hurt.
Yeah, he was.
Running back, the rookie out of the University of Georgia is going to start off the season as running back number 1, DeAndre Swift, who was an early second-round pick, 35th overall in this April's draft. 440 carries and 70 receptions in his 3 seasons in Georgia. He will compete for snaps, I think, with Kerryon Johnson a little bit, so you won't see maybe you'll see a breakout campaign as a rookie, but I don't think they will to start off the season at least because Kerryon Johnson is an established player in the league. So I have DeAndre Swift 23rd in running back rankings as a mid to back end running back. Number 2. How about you?
Yeah, I have him just around there at number 24. Like from his stats last season, he put up 8 touchdowns total, 7 rush, 1 receiving. Had only 24 receptions, but he put up the 1 touchdown and 216 yards with it and had over 1,200 yards rushing. So I think, obviously, those are college numbers, but I think he's going to be I think he'll probably establish himself as the number 1 running back this year at some point. So, yeah, I have him at number 24 and a mid to low end, like flex good player.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank God out of leagues in PPR, eh?
Yeah, thank goodness now it's convinced him. Holy.
But the guy that Swift's going to have to be competing for snaps with is the University of Auburn alma mater. It's Kerryon Johnson, who last season had 113 carries for 403 yards and 3 touchdowns to go along with 10 receptions, 127 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown.
Yep.
Receiving workload and rushing efficiency took a hard hit last season, 3.6 yards per carry, which is absolutely disgusting in 8 games as Detroit's primary rusher. I think he's going to get limited touches in the running game with Swift in the picture, but I think he'll probably be the primary passing down running back in Detroit. So keep a radar out for him. 32nd, I have him in my running back rankings. It's a low-end running back, number 2.
Yeah, I have him as number 33 overall. So, like you said, though, I think, like I said before, DeAndre Swift is going to win that job. And Kerryon Johnson will come in for a few. He's not going to be completely sidelined, but I see him as having the lesser role, so that's why I have him lower at 33. And then we're going to get into the wide receivers now. And the first one being Mr. Kenny Golladay. And Golladay is one to look out for. Last year put up 1,190 reception yards, 11 reception touchdowns, pretty crazy, on only 65 receptions at 116 targets. So he's putting up good numbers there. And he being very young as well, I think he's going to be a good player and going to have another good season this season. So I'm right inside my top 10 at number 10 overall.
Ooh. I picked Kenny Golladay as well last year. How are you? Not a big deal. Paced the NFL last year with 11 touchdown receptions in 2019, and I think this is a crazy stat. He was like you said, only had 63 receptions. Did you say 63, 65?
Yeah, 65.
So that averaged for 18.3 yards per target. So he is your prototypical down the field deep threat receiver. And he is fantasy's reigning number 9 receiver going into this season. So I think he's still gonna have a better season this year. He's 7th in wide receiver rankings as a high-end wide receiver number 1.
Bro, I don't know where that came from. I was just trying to look at the stats for the next guy that I was going to bring up, and that's Mr. Marvin Jones Jr. And Marvin Jones Jr. last year. Sorry, man, that happens every episode. He put up 779 reception yards, had 9 reception touchdowns. It's coming up again. And he had like 62, if I saw it correctly, I'll X that out. 62 receptions, but he put up 9 touchdowns. And that's only 2 less than what Kenny Golladay put up last year. Marvin Jones has been in the league for quite some time, since around like 2012. They also do have the other veteran, Danny Amendola. But I don't have either of them ranked, but there's still 2 players to look out for me.
Yeah, just in terms of usage in Detroit's offense, like Jones and Golladay are getting the same amount of percentage with terms of the ball getting thrown to them. Jones had 86 targets, Golladay had 85, and Amendola had 78. So they're all getting good looks. It's just a matter of how they're getting it. Like Golladay is your down the field threat. That's why he's got over 1,000 yards. So Marvin Jones is still getting the ball. So I actually have him ranked at 31.
Wow.
Low-end wide receiver number 2, but a high to mid-end flex. I think it's going to be a major factor if it's a PPR league like ours. How are you? Tight end position, we got the sophomore T.J. Hawkinson, who last season had 32 receptions for 367 yards and 2 touchdowns. Showed his upside with 6 reception and 131-yard, 1 touchdown game in his NFL debut for, nice first impression. But managed only double-digit fantasy points just in 1 additional game and missed the final 4 due to injury. So kind of a flash in the pan for his rookie season. So I think he should have more of an increased workload this season due to a really high upside, I think, for a player who decent numbers for a rookie year. So I have him ranked 14th in my tight end rankings, mid to low end starter.
Yeah, I had him last year, and obviously it didn't pan out well for me.
How'd that work for you?
Yeah, shut up. But like you said, I think he's gonna break out again this year. Like he's showing some good numbers from last year, only starting in 7 games and playing in 12 of them. So I have him ranked right below you at number 15 overall for the tight end position.
Not bad.
And then for the kicker, the other kicker that's really cracked my list is also on the Lions. His name, Matt Prater. Matt Prater hit 35 out of 36 extra points. And then he hit 26 out of 31 field goals for an 83.9% field goal percentage. From 50-plus, he actually hit 7 out of 8.
Not too bad.
50-plus yard kicks last year. 6 out of 9, 40 to 49. 2 out of 3, 30 to 39, and 11 out of 11, 20 to 29. So he's a kicker to really look out for because he can hit those long bombs. He's still pounding it away. That's why I have him at number 5. So he's number 5 ranked kicker for me.
Yeah, I have him ranked the same place at number 5. Matt Prater in 5 of his past 8 seasons have resulted in top 10 fantasy campaigns, including 3 of the past 4. Once adjusted for distance, however, Prater trails only the best kicker in the league, Justin Tucker, in terms of field goal accuracy over the past 5 seasons. So he's one of the best kickers in the league and one of the deepest legs in the league. So again, number 5, high to mid-end starter for moi, Malcolm. But someone who isn't a high to mid-end starter would be the defense for Detroit, who last season only managed 28 sacks, 7 INTs, 11 fumbles, 3 touchdowns, 411 points against, and 6,406 yards against. The only real person I can name on this defense is Jeff Okudah, who they drafted. Exactly, because they did get rid of Darius.
Big name.
They got rid of Darius Slay in the offseason to Philly.
Jeez.
So yeah, I really can't name anybody else on Detroit's defense other than Jeff Okudah. So,
I'm trying to think, man.
So I think I know there's a Flowers is on the defensive end, and that's all I got for you.
That's it.
So yeah, they're not inside my top 15 if you didn't get the hint.
If you didn't get the hint either, yeah, me neither. We were laughing at them because they were jokes, sorry, Jake, but it's true. The next team we're going to talk about, the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know.
Okay, Lizzo, calm down.
We're going to start with Mr. If I Die, I Die. Approach on COVID is Mr. Kirk Cousins. Before we get into his stats, recently he talked about, I'm going to live about my life. survival of the fittest. And who can blame him, right? Like, let him do it. He also said, though, like, he had to come up with another statement, but I still support wearing a mask. So he's obviously living his lifestyle, but he's protecting others at the same time. He wants to be able to do that. But his first comments were pretty funny. If I die, I die from COVID. He doesn't care if he gets it. He's saying, let God run his natural course on me. But we'll get into more of his fantasy stats now. Last year had 3,602 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a good 69.1 completion percentage. Also had 1 rushing touchdown and 63 rushing yards. Not that much of a rushing quarterback anyways, but he had a good season last season. Not like not like an outstanding season where it would like blow you away, but it was still pretty good. And I would have him ranked inside my top 25 at number 22 overall.
We're hitting the same notes here today, but
yeah, I think so.
We're at number 22 as well for Kirk Cousins. Completed 69% of his passes, so top 5 for second consecutive season, and posted an 8.1 yard per attempt, which was good for 7th best in the league. But run-heavy offense in Minnesota, so it really does not favor him at all in fantasy. And personally, one of the worst head coaches in the league in Mike Zimmer, but they still made the playoffs, so that's why he's still employed. So again, 22nd in quarterback rankings, back-end quarterback 1 at best. Even though I'm not going to start off the season due to having being diagnosed with COVID. So to quote every Kirk Cousins fan out there, I don't like that. Running back, we got Mr. Dalvin Cook, unreal player, 250. Yeah, you like that? 250 carries for 1,135 yards. And 13 touchdowns, 53 receptions as well to go for 519 yards. Through week 14, Cook led the league in rushing touchdowns and trailed only Mr. Christian McCaffrey in fantasy points. He's finished no lower than 9th among running backs in carries, receptions, touches, scrimmage yards, and touchdowns. Cook's 15 carries inside the 5 were 3rd most in the league, and he scored at least 1 touchdown in 11 of 14 games. So consistency is there. But what isn't there is his injury woes. He's missed 19 games in the last 3 seasons.
That's a lot of games.
So are you wary of taking Dalvin Cook in your draft?
I'm still not. I'm still, if he's there within the first 2 rounds.
So you're not saying I'm going out to get this guy? It's going to let him fall to you.
I'll let him fall to me. If he's there within the first 2 rounds, I'm picking him up.
Really?
If he's there second round, late second round, let's say I get like 4th overall
hypothetically.
Hypothetically, if I get like 4th overall pick in a 12-man league and I get the 4th pick and he's there, I'm taking him.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook is ranked 6th for me in my running back rankings as a high to mid-end running back. Number 1. How about you?
At the resolution, but he's still good than a lot of these other guys that we've talked about over the past few weeks and that we will talk about next week as well. But yeah, number 6 overall. Is there a number back you'd like to discuss?
Not that I'm talking about.
Okay. So we're going to go to the wide receivers then. And the first wide receiver I'm going to talk about, got 2 for you today. First one being Mr. Adam Thielen. Only played in 10 games last year, so he had 418 reception yards, 6 reception touchdowns, 30 receptions, and 1 rushing touchdown, actually. And he didn't know. It's 9 reception touchdowns, 15 receptions, and 153 targets. So here's someone that you really have to look out for. Obviously, hitting that injury put him back a little bit, but I think he's going to be ready to go again this year and bound to have an 1,000-plus yard season. So I have him ranked within my top 15 at number 12 overall.
Okay, yeah, so we're basically hitting the same notes with rankings. Number 12 again for me. He's going to be declared number 1 in Minnesota this year. But like you said, missed 6 games because of injury last season, but was previously very reliable, having not missed a single game during his first 5 seasons, and was 9th best in fantasy before the injury. So, and I think there really is not an established receiver on this Minnesota roster. So I think he should be primed for a big season, almost maybe all-pro, maybe. So again, number 12, low-end wide receiver number 1, high-end wide receiver 2, without a doubt. You're sleeping on Thielen, or people sleeping on him?
No, people are sleeping on this next guy. This next guy coming out of LSU
Go Tigers.
recently from the draft of 2019 is Justin Jefferson. And I think Justin Jefferson is going to make a name for himself in Minnesota. And I think it'll
This
be
year?
this year. Yes, I think it'll be the number two, definite number two. It'll show. And then he will probably be fighting for that number one position next year with Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson last year in LSU put up 1,540 reception yards, 18 reception touchdowns, and 111 receptions. Obviously had Mr. Joe Burrow throwing to him. But Minnesota, he
Big
does
fan
have
of Joe Burrow, eh?
hate him, actually.
Yep.
Um, but you will have Kirk Cousins, who is a good quarterback, and he's just a stay in the pocket type of guy, sling it to you type of quarterback. So Justin Jefferson is going to have. I know you said they are run heavy. I think Justin Jefferson show up and within my top 30, but no.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson's got big shoes to fill in replacing Stephon Diggs, who departed for Buffalo. But Justin Jefferson last season, 90%, he lined up in the slot, which happens to be, I think, is Adam Thielen's primary target area is the slot. So who's going to have to adapt to be what is up for interpretation and Mike Zimmer to figure out. But yeah, like you said, he paced all of FBS last year, which whoever doesn't know that is all Division I football, with 111 receptions in 2019. As well, Jefferson's 83% catch rate and 18 touchdowns were best in this year's rookie class. So he's got some pretty good numbers to back himself up on going into his first NFL campaign, but has to establish himself. So I have him ranked number 48 in my wide receiver rankings as a bench role to start because I think at some point he's going to show up. But I don't know if it'll be at the start of the season or not.
Could the Eagles could they have drafted him in the draft?
Yes, but they decided to take Jalen Reagor instead.
Just throwing that out here for those Eagles fans that we know. So
Nice.
the two of them.
Tight end position, we got the University of Alabama alma mater. Roll Tide. It's Irv Smith Jr. Last season, 36 receptions for 311 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was Minnesota's probably is going to be Minnesota's primary tight end this season due to Kyle Rudolph being aging well. So Irv Smith's probably going to get more of the receptions than Kyle Rudolph because he's more of a blocking tight end now, and Conley's probably going to be more relied on that more because of the run-heavy offense in Minnesota. But that I'll take into account for because Irv Smith probably won't get as much receptions as he will anybody anywhere else. I have him ranked 18th in my tight end rankings as a low-end tight end number 1.
I have him ranked number 22 overall. So still like a low-end tight end for me. I don't expect a lot out of him. He did start 7 games last season, so that's why he didn't get a lot of numbers and only played in 12 games total. So he didn't get them as much as he could have, but he's still someone. Oh no, he played in all 16. Sorry, I was looking at the other guy. Played in all 16 games, but started in 10 of them, so he didn't start in 6 of them. But like you said, I think he'll develop into that number 1 position at the tight end position in Minnesota, and he's still a name to look out for.
Yeah, the guy that's going to be taking over at time number 1, Kyle Rudolph, last season had 39 receptions for 367 yards and 6 touchdowns. Was 8th among tight ends in snaps and 4th in touchdowns with 6. So I think he's probably going to keep those numbers up. Maybe the snaps because he's a very good blocking tight end. I think we'll lose more of the receptions due to the emergence of Irv Smith. So I have him ranked 27th in my tight end rankings just as a bench role player.
Yeah, so now we'll get to the kicker in Minnesota. I don't have
The former Cowboy.
I don't have him ranked inside my top 15, but last year he did hit 27 out of his 29 field goals and a 93% kicking percentage. Just started pulling up his stats here.
It's Mr. Dan Bailey. 27, 29 field goals, 44 in extra points.
Yeah, there we go.
But aging leg makes for few kicks from long range, so it's not a huge fantasy threat on anybody's radar. So not inside my top 15 kickers. What about yourself?
No, not mine. So yeah, like we said, he had 10 of 10 from 20 to 29, 9 out of 9 from 30 to 39, 5 out of 7 from 40 to 49, and then 3 out of 50 plus. But like Jay said, most of his kicks coming within 40 yards. So it's not going to be a big pickup for you. So that's why I don't have him within my top.
We got
Either.
Minnesota's defense up next with 48 sacks, 17 INTs, 14 fumble recoveries, 2 touchdowns, 301 points against, and 5,465 yards against. Last year, Minnesota's defense posted its second consecutive fifth-place fantasy campaign last season and has finished no lower than 11th over the past 5. They have finished top 7 in points allowed each of the last 5 seasons, top 5 in sacks each of the past 2, and was top 5 in both interceptions and forced fumbles last year. But major departures on that defensive front, with Linval Joseph going to LA and Emerson Griffin going to the Cowboys, makes me gag every time I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much every starting cornerback is now left in Minnesota as well. So huge holes to fill. But they have Harrison Smith as well. So, I mean, like, arguably one of the best safeties in the league. So I think they'll still manage a good season this year in fantasy. I have them ranked 8th in my defensive rankings as a back-end starter.
Yeah, like with names like Daniel Hunter, Yannick Ngakoue, Anthony Barr, Harrison Smith, I think that they're still going to be a good team, a good defense. And I have them ranked at number 11, so just outside my top 10. But at 11, like Jay said, low end number 1 starting defense for you. And then we're going to get into our final team here. The last team, not with the most star-studded players, but we're going to get into them anyways. They're the Chicago Bears. The Bears running quarterback position. We have 2 guys. I have 2 guys on my top 35 list. So the first guy being Mr. Young Guy on the team, Mitch Trubisky, had 3,128 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions at a 63.2% completion rate. Also had 2 rushing touchdowns and 193 rushing yards. He's going to have to find his way again, where he had that great season 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he's got to find his way back. It's like he's cursed almost. But I have him ranked as a starter in Chicago. So I have him at number 27 overall in my quarterback rankings.
Mr. Trubisky should start off the season as week 1 starter, I would hope.
Yeah.
But only had 3 top 10 fantasy weeks and finished 26th in the position of fantasy points by the season's end. So he's going to have a good season if he wants to keep his job. So I have him ranked 30th in my quarterback rankings as a bench role.
And then
you see all the memes about him like throwing the accuracy, like you see the Kirk Cousins one killed me, but it really should be Mitch Trubisky. His accuracy is yeah. So.
It's gross. Yeah, it's nasty. But the Mr. Dead Last in my quarterback rankings.
Me too.
35th overall.
Mr. Super Bowl MVP.
Big Dick Foles. He is number 35 last. And there we're back.
Still recording though.
Still recording. And Nick Foles, like I said last year, he's.
Oh my God.
Out for being in that number 1 spot, but I don't think he's going to get it. So Nick Foles, dead last, number 35 out of 35 on my quarterback rankings.
Right there with you. He's never played more than 13 games in a single regular season and has finished only 1 season better than 29th in fantasy points. He's registered exactly 2 weekly fantasy finishes better than 12 over the past 4 seasons. So he is nothing to scream about in terms of fantasy production whatsoever. But he's got a ring on his finger.
That's true.
That no one else in that Chicago locker room has. In running back now in Chicago, we have Mr. David Montgomery coming off a rookie season in which he had 242 carries for 889 yards and 6 touchdowns to go along with 25 receptions for 185 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Was 12th among running backs in touches and 6th in carries inside the 5 with 14. Poor rushing efficiency, which was a 3.7 yards per carry and 1.6 yards after catch, and a lack of volume and effectiveness as a pass catcher, with 185 yards on only 37 targets. He only had 2 top 15 fantasy weeks, and most of that passing game in terms of the running back and locker room goes to Mr. Tariq Cohen, who we'll get into in a second. So I have him ranked 24th in my running back rankings as a mid to back end running back number 2.
Yeah, he only started 8 games, I think, last year. So I have him just around the same ballpark at number 25 overall for David Montgomery.
Yeah. Mr. Tariq Cohen, the Mr. Swiss Army knife,
Yes, sir.
ranked 4th among backs in both targets, 261, and receptions, 203 since entering the NFL in 2017. Hasn't surpassed more than 100 carries in a season and more than 4 carries inside the 5 in his career.
Nice.
So he's doing nothing running the ball whatsoever.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me I had him last year.
Yeah, nice. 70-plus catches in each of the past 2 seasons has helped him to finishing finishes of 11th and 27th, respectively, in 2018 and 2019.
Yeah.
So I have him ranked 29th in running back rankings as a high to mid-end flex player. And that's where he should only be in fantasy lineups, not as a running back.
Yeah, that's all I used him last year as a flex, and he was a pretty decent flex. He got me points sometimes when I needed, but then didn't show, of course, at some other points. So I have him right behind what you said at number 28 overall, Mr. Tariq Cohen. And then we'll get into the wide receiver situation. So the first receiver I'll talk about is Mr. Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson last year had 1,147 reception yards, 7 reception touchdowns, only 2 away from 100 receptions at 98, but 154 targets. So he's being looked at constantly for Mitchell Trubisky to throw the ball to. I think he's a good player, and he'll crack. I think he'll be that low-end starter on your team or a good solid number 2 receiver, and that's why I have him ranked at number 16 overall.
Yeah, A-Rob paced all wide receivers in snaps while ranking no lower than 6th in routes, targets, receptions, and end zone targets, which ended up with him making his second career top 8 fantasy season last year. But this poor guy can't catch any breaks because he's got no reliable quarterback again. Coming from Jacksonville, he's gotten, in his career, his quarterbacks have been Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky.
Yikes.
How are you? So, and he's still putting up a 1,000-yard season, so good for him. So I have him ranked 14th in my wide receiver rankings. Don't see him as a number 1 receiver, so I have him ranked as a high to mid-end wide receiver number 2 for sure.
Yep. And then the other guy I'll talk about has been in the league for quite some time, at 34 years old, is Ted Ginn Jr., coming over from the New Orleans.
Out of the Ohio State University.
Of course, Jay has to bring that up. Coming from the Saints last year, he had 30 receptions, 56 targets, 421 yards only, and 2 reception touchdowns. Didn't do much rushing either. So he's still I think he's just going to be that second guy. I think just because he's a vet, he'll earn that number 2 spot to be looked at. But he's still someone I would say is on the waiver you would look out for. If your guy gets injured and you think the matchup's right, put Ted Ginn in there, pick up him up on the waiver wire.
Yeah. The only thing I really add on to that is that A-Rob is really the only receiver in Chicago's room that's really established. So number 2 is really up for grabs. It's either him or Anthony Miller that's going to get it. So yeah. I think, like you said, the more benefit of the doubt is going to go to Ted Ginn, but he's not on my top 60 ranked.
Yeah.
I don't know how long he's going to last in Chicago, to tell you the truth. I think he's going to be dealt pretty quickly. But tight end is Mr. Jimmy Graham, the vet. Could be a Hall of Famer, but no ring to prove himself yet. 38 receptions for 447 yards and 3 touchdowns. He is coming off his worst statistical season since his rookie season.
Yikes.
Coming out at Green Bay, so obviously his age is declining. I think he's going to be more of a vet, mentor role for the young kids in Chicago. I don't see him getting much more than what he had last year at all, so I have him ranked 20. He was 21st last year in fantasy point. I have him ranked 1 higher at number 22 as a bench role.
Yeah, I have him number 24 as a bench role. If you do draft 2 tight ends, some people do.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Okay. But we'll talk about their kicker now, and their kicker not ranked.
Chicago kickers.
Woo, love that, but obviously
not really.
So in Chicago, he's not ranked for me, but it's Mr. Eddie Pinheiro. And last season, so this will be his second season at 25 years old. Last season hit 27 out of his 29 extra points, and then hit of his field goals hit 23 out of 28, so 82% efficiency, not the best percentage for a kicker. His longest being a 53-yarder, though, so he was 2 of 2 last year from 50+, but he was 3 of 7 from 40 to 49, 9 of 10 from 30 to 39, 8 of 8 from 20 to 29, and 1 of 1 from 0 to 19. So obviously he's not getting that volume, and he's not performing in that 40 to 49 range yet. So he's not an established kicker, so not ranked for me.
Yeah, it's going to take me a long time to get over the double doink in Chicago, so I'm staying way clear of Bears kickers for the foreseeable future. So he is not inside my top 15 whatsoever. But for the defense in Chicago, we had 32 sacks last season with 10 INTs, 9 fumbles, 2 touchdowns, under 300 points at 298 points against, and 5,186 yards against. After dominating the NFL with 55 more fantasy points than any other defense last season, Chicago plummeted to 15th in 2019. Plummeted from 1st to 22nd in forced turnovers and 3rd to 24th in sacks. Ugh. Lost 3 of their top 6 and 7 of their 12 defenders in terms of snaps during the offseason, which included Clinton Dix, who is now a free agent after getting released from Dallas. Leonard Floyd and Prince Amukamara also leave the team, but pass rusher Robert Quinn and a healthy Canadian Akeem Hicks definitely help. But even with the likes as well having Khalil Mack, again, arguably best safety in football, Eddie Jackson, linebacker Danny Trevathan, and second safety Kyle Fuller will all make big impacts. So hopefully the Monsters of the Midway can return to being the Monsters of the Midway, and I think they will. So I have them ranked 10th in my defensive rankings as a back-end starter.
I have them ranked higher than 10th, actually, in my top 10 at number 7 overall. So I think they're going to show out this year and put up some good numbers, and Khalil Mack will get back to being Khalil Mack. Obviously didn't have like his best season last season, but still a pretty decent one. So I think in the top 7 for me for the Bears is a defense to look out for, like they always are usually.
Absolutely. So there you have it. We have narrowed it down from 7 divisions all the way to 1. That will be coming to you Thursday because that's when the NFL season starts.
Whoa.
I cannot wait to tell you
Houston
the truth.
versus who?
The defending champs. But yes, Fantasy Friday will be Fantasy Thursday next week, and we'll get into the best division of football with our 2 teams in the AFC North. So we got the weekly recap coming to you tomorrow with a lot of things happening in the world of sports for sure. So until then, we'll keep you posted. It's Jacob.
And Malcolm.